Hello. Um, Played quite a bit of Lorcana and got quite a lot of testing data in, which is really good to see what decks are kind of performing at the best and what are performing at the least, I guess. But I guess before I mention that, I did see a post about Whole New World rotating out, and just to mention that, I think it always looks like a sad thing at the start of it, but it ends up being quite a healthy thing because you have all these cards like Whole New World and the Rabbit Bounce package that we have with Madam Mim and Merlin, and all that stuff is awesome. If we're playing that in 5 years' time, you're probably going to be quite tired and quite bored of it. So in this way, rotation sometimes gets to put that like experience of playing with those cards in a nice like glass case, and you get to have those memories forever of enjoying those cards, rather than they kind of go into a tired, sad existence, kind of the way that like footballers do. Like Ronaldo's very good. He's now 40, still playing football. He shouldn't be doing that. And it's quite sad to watch him play sometimes. So like yeah, you get to sort of savor that moment, and like everything comes to an end and it comes to a nice end. So I think it's going to be very good. It's going to be very sad when we say goodbye to a lot of our favorite cards, but in the future, we're going to be like, oh, I remember those memories of those cards, and now we get to play with all these new cards. So it's a really awesome experience, and I think it's very good for the game. But going on to set eight, and where I think the sort of meta is landing. So like, of course, myself, I've been really enjoying Amber Steel aggro, and at this point, I'm trying to fit as many animal type cards as I can in the deck. Because you start off with like Daisy and the new lady. Um, you know, Struggling to think of more now off the top of my head. But there's loads of different animals that you can put into the deck, and I really quite like it. I also like the playstyle of it. It's real pure aggro, and because of that lady card, you're able to get quite consistent games on the draw. And because it's Lorcana on the play, you sort of just win because you're on the play and you're an aggro deck, and that's sort of how the game works. Um, so anything that benefits you on the draw, like incredibly benefits you on the play, and I think I'm hitting like 80 to 90% win rates on the play, ridiculous win rates, and then on the draw it's like down to about 50, 60. So that's not great, but that's the life you live by. And I'm mainly playing for Axion right now, which is a best of three environment. So a deck like this could be very good or very bad. I still think the decks that went very consistently on the play do very well in best of two or two game format, because it means half of your games during the day should be locked in, or they have very high win rates. And then you just hate to find like 4 or 5 games on the draw to win, and make the top cut, or make whatever to achieve whatever you need to achieve. So I think the deck's very good. It doesn't come out with problems. I don't think it's the pick up and you just get free wins sort of deck. It's not a Bucky deck or Ruby Sapphire at its height. It's still like the mulligan is something you pretty much have to spend your entire time practicing. And like on top of that, sometimes you just brick. Sometimes you do the right mulligan and get the wrong cards back, and there was no way you were going to win that game anyway. The deck doesn't really have any ways to claw back into the games, but for me personally, really enjoying it, really enjoying the play style and the cards that Kiwi got. Like, I think I've been leaning more towards a Bell package for that again, mainly because everyone's high rolling and everyone's doing really broken things. Playing a consistent aggro deck like the way that Kiwi was playing just doesn't feel like it works that well in set eight. You need a Bell turn one into singing removal, into flooding the board with stuff and playing desperate plan, and then putting an Arthur on the boards to wipe everyone out. You need to be doing stuff like that. So yeah, both the two decks I like are very much doing well in my opinion, and they're very fun in set eight. And like this is a sort of mocked up chart of where I'd put things in the meta, and I think things change around quite a lot here, but it gives you a bit of an example. I think yeah, it was still going into this week, early week, I think week two now, sorry. um I think Amber Steel and Emerald Steel both just exceed expectations of what the other decks do. What they can do is just a lot of very powerful broken things, I think. Sorry, I'm just going to close that blind because my eyes are going blind. Um, I think Amber Steel's aggro version and its traditional version, just with the inclusion of Rhino and Beyond the Horizon for the wheel version, like just, like you say, just getting better cards statted wise, power wise, they just perform a lot better than any other deck does. So I think they just generally have to be an S tier. And Emerald Steel with Beyond the Horizon, they've got like an insane discard card. They've got loads of fun cards to try out with like Chip and the new Flynn as well. Like they've got loads there that they can do, and like keep trying new things. Like they've just basically got a bunch of new Buster cards as well. On top of that, the deck was never really that bad. With Hiram gone as well, it just got better. because that was its kind of biggest weakness, was that people could just draw a bunch of cards again as soon as they got discarded. So yeah, I think those two just exceed expectations right now. But that doesn't mean they're going to go on and win every event. We've seen them doing very well, but I think they're the ones that have the targets on their back, so they're the ones that get heavily countered. And it's not like Ruby Sapphire at its peak before rotation. They are very much, you can counter them. Like you can go, how am I going to deal with Diablo? I'll do this. How am I going to deal beyond the horizon? Well, I'll just flood the board and play my hand out. So if they want to do it, and I think learning to play around beyond the horizon is pretty important, because it's a bit of a tempo based game. The same we've always had with Whole New World. You want to keep your hand size down to about 3 cards. So if they do it, it's not that negative to you. Um, and then you're still benefiting from that. You're still just playing all your cards to the board. So a lot of the Ruby Sapphire decks and Ruby Amethyst decks can't really do that efficiently because they harbor big hand sizes. But all the other decks like Emerald, Amethyst Steel, Dock decks, and Amber Steel can kind of do these things quite efficiently. And all the other ones in between, I think Green Purple can as well. And Blurple will struggle a bit more, but I think they can still do it. They can go down to 3 cards and say, you aren't going to be on the horizon me. Cool, I'll just play Finders Keepers and get my hand size back again. So yeah, I think those are cards we can play around and learn to play against, but they are still fundamentally just really powerful cards. And the two that I've put into A tier, but the top of A tier, is the Emerald Amethyst sort of bounce and also the discard builds. They're both just really, really good decks. I think they have the chances to jump into the S tier and be S tier decks. I personally don't play them enough, and I don't see enough people playing them. But every time I see like a master at it, like Artifacts or LD, yeah, they've really pushed the deck to further limits, and like it's that understanding of sort of Amethyst as a color that they've had since like set one or whenever they've been playing it. Like it's just so in depth, and that of course brings me on to the second, which is Blurple, which is a deck that I could easily pick up and maybe not master, but I could very much enjoy it. All the Blurple lists are pretty much the same. Like sometimes they change over like their top end and put Monstro in, or put the Elsa back in the 8 cost, which I don't really agree with. They change things around, but overall it's a very like standard built deck. You need your ramp cards, you need your Bell, you need your foxes, you need your genies, you need your Elsas, and like but from there you can kind of just do a little tweaks, and it's pretty standard. And it has a very standard mulligan. It kind of just aims to ramp on 2 and put a 4 drop optimally genie on the board, and then they've got Bell if they want to, like early to start dealing with the aggro decks. So like overall, like the deck just runs very smooth, is insanely consistent. I don't think it, besides some of the fringe matchups, maybe Emerald, Amber, like discard, and I'd say I wouldn't say traditional Steel Song's a fringe matchup, but I think that matchup got a lot better for them with Monstro, and a lot more options that they can put in the top end to sort of deal with that. So it's like, if you're going to wheel me, that's fine. I'll just ramp into this big thing that I know you're going to struggle to remove. So I don't think that matchup's as bad. I say that not as a Blurple main pair. I'm pretty sure all the Blurple players will say that matchup's horrible. But yeah, I think they kind of matchup spread wise, they have the best matchup spread in the game. Everything feels sort of fair, and then some fringe pick decks can sort of beat them quite hard. Their aggro matchups like can be kind of rough, but if you ramp into a genie and then you put like you run something in and then use Elsa or Bell, the Mystic that moves the damage over, you're just creating a huge board and you're dealing with your opponent's board, which is just amazing tempo versus an aggro deck. Because some of the issues that Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire have is that they will deal with the aggro deck, but they won't win their own game, and they'll just slowly lose because they're playing a Daisy on board and they have to answer it, and then they play a Lawrence and they have to answer it. But with Blurple, they sort of deal with it and play characters at the same time. And I think the reason why I probably wouldn't play Blurple now, because we're heading into rotation next set, and I think a lot of the good elements of Blurple is the skill difference that you can do, the knowledge of the deck, and like the understanding of the Amethyst like bounce package really plays out in your favor. If you've been mastering that color since, like I say, set one, the same with Emerald Amethyst, like you're in a very good spot here. It's a very good deck that has really good matchup spread, and if you just really know how to play Amethyst games, you can skill the mirrors, you can skill around the aggro deck. So I just think overall it's just insanely good color pairing to have. When I pick it up, like I say, I can do the basics. I'll mulligan for my ramp on 2, find my genie. If I'm lucky, I'll get a Bell, ramp, play the genie out, and then from there on out, I'm trying to figure out how Amethyst players really play the game, because I've always been just such a steel player, and also as well, when I play it, I don't get access to steel cards, which kind of just frightens me because I'm so used to being like, I could sing Strength Feel, or I could do this, or or whatever, but I can't do that in blurple. And they have no real like hard removal besides the Hades, which again is also awkward removal. But yeah, I think this generally has the chance to be, these two have the chance to be into S tier, maybe even the best decks in the format. The way it spreads out, we haven't really had any major events. We've kind of had like week one events where, let's be honest, everyone just puts the busted cards into their decks and goes and plays the event, and no one really tries to counter the busted cards or try and do anything about it. They're just like, Beyond the Horizon reads amazing, Rhino reads amazing, I'll put them in my decks and we'll just play a few games of Lorcana. So from there on out, like, we'll start saying, okay, so the Amber Steel was doing very well, we'll try to counter that. How do we counter that? And try and build from there. But and maybe these two have the options in them. I think Emerald Amethyst really does, and Blurple, like I say, just plays such a fair, strong game. Not really dropping like to below like 40% win rates into other decks. Like it wins into almost everything. It's kind of like the way Ruby Amethyst has been for so many sets. It just doesn't have bad matchups, but it also doesn't excel and stomp anything out of the format. So yeah, I've got good eyes, and I think good eyes on Blurple. Sorry, and I think Blurple will do quite well. Ruby Sapphire, I think like all that really happened was they didn't get anything new. Think about the DKB build, the items build. I think is if that was a separate color, be like way down here in my opinion. But I think it didn't really get anything new. It sort of didn't do bad though. It's always been so powerful. If you can just ramp to big characters and throw them on the board like Shark and Sisu and be prepared and as an act as a song, sorry, and then like just put manas down. His game plan's still amazingly good. So it's not a bad spot, but overall, in my opinion, it's not in an amazing spot. So I wouldn't like. I'd say all it did was it just fell down the tiers a little bit. But besides that, it's still the same as it ever was. And like I said, if you a player like DKP or Moynihan who just knows that deck inside and out, you will just be better into most of the matchups for most people. Like if you're someone who's just picked up Emerald Steel, insanely busted deck, really, really powerful, but you're probably not going to beat someone who's had like hundreds of reps into that matchup and knows it inside out, even if you're the favored one in the matchup. So, yeah, I think for the final of set eight, I think if you've been a Ruby Sapphire player, probably just play it out with the Shark build, in my opinion. And Amethyst Steel just plays a very safe game as well. Again, it doesn't drop drastically in any of its matchups, being able to replay Pete, using all the steel removal as well, and like Amethyst is bounce package, like playing goats and just drawing cards. I don't think it's that bad, and they can use docks if not, because again we're in a Beyond the Horizon meta where like Rabbit probably isn't a very valid card right now because you just want to get your cards on the board and also have options to draw more cards later on if you need them. So like I say, if you went down to 3 cards in hand or something like that, and one of them's a dock, you're in a pretty fine spot against Beyond the Horizon and most other decks as well. Like 3 cards is very safe. And Ruby Amethyst sort of drops down a little bit. Like again, it didn't really get much. People look at, I think it's called Fling Dingers. Like that deck will have some. I have some hard games against it, and I think majority of that is I don't know what the next card they're going to play is. I just have to assume that it will be something to do about moving damage around. So yeah, that's fine. Like that's kind of a cool new idea. And the new 7 cost Hades, great card, just doesn't do anything into these two matchups in my opinion. You probably don't have anything on the board versus Emerald Steel, or if you do, you probably won that game anyway. And the Amber Steel aggro decks is probably going to win by that time anyway. And maybe traditional Steel Song putting that card down is a lot better, but putting damage around for them to just finish things off could be a bit rough as well. So again, I don't think it got like anything amazing. It did get the move damage counters and draw cards for that. That's kind of cool. As they got like more options to heal things, and because moving damage is basically their version of healing, but they also benefit from card draw as well. So I think again that's in the same bracket as Ruby Sapphire. It just moved down a little bit. And the last one I'm going to cover, because the rest of these, I think the rest of these decks are just fine. Like I think you can play them, and if you're very very good Emerald Amethyst, Emerald Amber like discard player, you most likely will top cut and win events. Like if you're good at hyper aggro player, like I don't really justify these being B or C tier like any much further than each other. I think they're all fine. I think Ruby Emerald could really prove itself this set at bigger events, and Sapphire Emerald I'd put it down here because again I think it's fine. I've seen some amazing players on that who know the lists and what their combos can do and the lengths their deck can go inside and out, but overall I just never that impressed by it personally. It's the cool thing I saw in there was they used the Ratican's Mousetrap, in Squirtle's list, and I really like that card because you could just recycle it with big Tamatoa and keep reducing lore from your opponent, which was a nice comeback mechanic versus like an aggro deck where they kind of struggle. But besides that, yeah, they're all fine. I'm sure they'll win like lots of store champs. They'll probably get like into top cuts and sneak in, but overall, I wouldn't say they're the most optimal lists right now. And the last one, of course, is Kiwi, which I put right at the bottom of A tier. I mean, historically, they have good pairings into traditional Steel Song and Emerald Steel Discard. Like, they have the two best decks in the format are very good matchups for them. But Emerald Steel kind of got a bit more overwhelming and powerful, so just on the power level, they could maybe beat you. And Amber Steel, with the new Lady card aggro decks, they can now go even wider than they could before and be even more obnoxious, and Kiwi sort of struggles with that, especially as the cards we were looking at are things like Desperate Plan. So into Emerald Steel, we're aiming to have one card in hand, which is Desperate Plan. They can just sudden chill and take that out of your hand, so it doesn't matter anyway. Um, you might want to keep two cards, ink one, then play the Desperate Plan, but then you probably haven't committed anything to the board. And in that matchup, it's quite a race. And Arthur is not particularly that amazing into the Amber Steel aggro because they're playing 3 to 4 characters wide, and having one big character take things out whilst you're not drawing cards is a bit rough. And again, versus either of these two decks, when you play the Desperate Plan, it feels like kind of a big tempo loss. And that could be the reason that you lost the game because you've given them breathing room. They can set up their singers, they can set up their board, they can they'll be advancing going wider whilst you're drawing 3 cards. So I still think they have amazing game plans into both of these. Probably the best out of quite a few of these decks. Really, they probably have the best matchup into it. I personally, yeah, I think they're pretty great. I think that's why I was looking at putting the Bell back in, and I want to try a Bell based list because these two decks are very high roll. Lady making them go 4 wide into like a Smee or whatever is awesome, and Emerald still being able to just discard Beyond the Horizon and sing it off like Muses and Prince John is awesome as well. So we kind of need to introduce a high roll as well back into the deck, which is Bell, just to keep up with like the meta basically and keep up with all the popular decks. But I still think it's a very good shot. And with the matchups that we're struggling with, the Amethyst ones, I think kind of dropping down a little bit, and most likely you'll see these two, and then a smaller hand size of these ones. I think it's in a fairly good spot, but it probably does just sit right at the back here, behind all of these Amethyst matchups, because I don't think you could argue that Kiwi is doing better than the Amethyst decks. Like, those are very hard matchups to 2-0. So yeah, but I think it's got a lot better than the last set. I think it got a lot more than some of the other decks did. And in a sense, it did kind of jump up a tier. I think I've always rated it around this level, but I think a little bit further behind. But yeah, I think that's more of a rough estimate of like where I'd put the tier list and where I put the decks out right now. I think we've got big events like Axion at the end of the month, and I think we've got some American ones like the Invitational Inc. or something like that this weekend, and they should all like really give us a bit more of an insight. But if I was going into a room, I'd say like these are the decks I'd probably be thinking about. I know I'm going to see Emerald Steel and Amber Steel, and then like likely there's a lot of Emerald Amethyst players who still have a lot of belief in it, and Blurple just seems very very solid. And then sort of cut off there, going backwards, like yeah, they're good decks. I should probably get some practice into them, but overall, I'd expect to see these four the most. And maybe Ruby Sapphire as well, because people just never quit that. And it's also not that bad. So yeah, that's sort of just a rough little estimate, I think, of where I'm describing the meta to be right now in set 8.